Paano naman kaming kumilang alas sa madaling araw, wala pang katatawa dito kaninang umaga?
Po nga sir 7 na po. Kasi po sir, maraming magpila sir, kailangan mauna po kami.
Because the vaccine is being told. Remember, this is, kasi hindi namin mai-announce eh. Di ba? Hindi namin ma-announce anong brand. The only way man naman kung nandito ka na. And there are things na kailangan gawin sa particular na brand. Unlike yung Sinovac saka AstraZeneca, easy management. Basta, taga rito kami, alam namin kung sino mahirap eh. Ako na magsasabi sa inyo, lumabas kayo ng eskwelahan ito, magturo kayo sa akin ng mayaman dito. So lahat ko considered A5. Ito ang base ko.
And you just saw clips of how the inoculation of the A5 cluster went in Manila City. With the LGU's first-come, first-served policy, many indigents had to line up as early as 2 a.m.
Manila Mayor Isko Moreno asks for patience, vowing to come up with a scheduled system once vaccine supply becomes steady. Good evening, I'm Gretchen Ho.
I'm Ed Lingao. You are watching The Big Story. Let's start with the local government units opening their vaccination programs to the A5 group or the indigent sector.
But it's not easy as it seems, especially that vaccine supply remains an issue. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro will give us a front seat to the big story.
As a public school teacher, Christina Bulak says getting herself vaccinated is a chance to teach others about being responsible during the pandemic.
Kailangan kami rin yung maging role model para at least yung mga parents ng pupils namin maging responsable rin.
On Wednesday, the vaccination drive expanded to the A5 category or the poorer members of the population. A valid government ID, a certificate of indigency, and a confirmatory text were the requirements for A5 in San Juan City. To qualify, one must be on the list of indigents under the National Household Targeting System for Poverty Reduction. But the City of Manila was more lenient.
The fact po na tayo ay residente ng Baseco, syempre, hindi mo naman sasabihin mayaman yan, di ba?
More than 7,700 doses for the indigent group were rolled out in 8 different sites in Manila on Wednesday. The local government plans to roll out a total of 74,000 doses exclusively for A5.
Sobrang importante po kasi hindi lang po protection for myself and for my family rin kasi.
But not everyone who came were sure to get the jab. In the A5 vaccination site in the Manila Port area, informal settlers lined up as early as 2 a.m. But 800 port workers were suddenly given priority. So those who were first in line were automatically sent to the back.
Gets naman namin na mauuna siguro yung mga trabahador nila. Pero sana sinabihan kami ng mas maaga. Kasi maaga rin naman kami pumili.
The Manila LGU has been criticized for its walk-in vaccination program, which has caused overcrowding and forced many to wait up to 10 hours before getting vaccinated, assuming they get lucky. Manila Mayor Isko Moreno asks for patience and understanding, saying rollouts are most efficient with walk-ins. Moreno says he will consider an appointment-based rollout once vaccines become available. I'm Jacob Lazaro and we are One News.
And let's get more information on this move to start vaccinating down the priority line. And now joining us on the line is health spokesperson Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere. Yusek Vergere, thank you for joining us and welcome back to the big story.
Yes, good evening po, sir. Magandang gabi po sa inyo.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, just for clarity po, ano po talaga yung policy dun sa vaccination ng A5 cluster? May flexibility ho ba yung LGUs on whether to shift to A5 or is there any directive from DOH?
Actually, there was a guideline issued already, both for the A4 and the A5. That is how we are going to do the simultaneous vaccinations. Pero lagi pong may kolatilya dyan, it is dependent on the supplies. Ngayon, kasi meron ho tayo ng COVAX vaccines. Yung COVAX vaccines na galing po sa WHO, tayo po ay binigyan ng kondisyon ng WHO that it can only be provided to A1, A2, A3, and A5. So many of our LGUs right now, because wala pong nagpupunta masyado dun sa sektor no, na A1 to A3 na meron silang COVAX vaccines, very well can already accommodate A5 sector. Kaya lang ho siguro ang kailangan, meron tayong organized way of doing things. We need to have scheduling so that people won't crowd the vaccination sites.
Okay, ma'am, specifically dun sa case po ng Manila, yung policy po ni Mayor Isko Moreno na posible yung walk-in vaccinees. Does this go along with the policy of the IATF and the DOH?
Well, the major policy would be that we do master listing so that people can have schedules and then they will be called or texted if it is their schedule already. Now, of course, we give our parang leeway para sa mga LGUs. What will work best for them, that's how they are going to do it. But of course, let me just say that nung nakita natin kanina na mukhang hindi nag-work, sana po maipatupad natin yung baka may ibang strategy naman that would be better so that we can avoid crowding and we can also avoid na yung mga taong nagpunta ay hindi natin mabibigyan.
Yes nga. O nga ma'am, specifically po yung case ng Manila, may mga complaints of a bit of overcrowding dun sa vaccine areas. I'm wondering if the DOH has any message or anything that wants to tell Manila Mayor Isko Moreno about this particular case.
Well, as I've said, no, it's not going to be very specific for the City of Manila. We would want to advise and remind all of our local government units that first and foremost, safety is our principle and what we should have in our vaccination sites. So therefore, we avoid crowding. And one of the things that we have given as guidance would be the master listing and scheduling of our vaccinees. Because of the scarcity of our supplies, it would be best if we can do the scheduling so that people, kahit 2 months pa lang from now, ang kanilang schedule, alam nila kung kailan sila babakunahan at they won't be going to the vaccination sites if they do not have their schedules yet. So isa po to sa pwede nating gawin, lalong-lalo na po nga ngayon na kulang pa ang ating supplies, para ang ating mga kababayan, bagamat nasasabik na, alam po nila na may schedule sila, kahit hindi pa ngayon ay magkakaroon pa rin. So let me just remind our local governments na let's strictly enforce our minimum health standards. Napaka-fragile po ng ating sitwasyon ngayon at ito pong mga ganitong klase ng mga activities at nagiging resulta ng ating activities might lead to super spreader events.
Okay, Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere, thank you po for joining us on The Big Story. With the announcement of the vaccination of the A5 group, more Filipinos are set to get their protection against COVID-19. Tonight's big number, 16 million. That's the number of indigent Filipinos now up for vaccination under the A5 priority group. Like the A1 to A3 clusters, vaccines via the COVAX facility may be used for A5 recipients. But the health department says their inoculation will still depend on supply. As of Wednesday, the country's stockpile stands at 12.7 million doses.
These are the other big stories tonight. For those itching to ditch face shields, the health department says you may opt not to use it, but only outdoors. In politics, the president voiced his support for a possible VP run of House Majority Leader Martin Romualdez. Over in the opposition, Chel Diokno said he will give the elections another go in 2022. And it was a nail-biter of a game as Gilas Pilipinas recovered from a slow start to clinch a win against South Korea. With the win, they're now off to the FIBA Asia Cup. These big stories after the break.
Good evening, you're still watching The Big Story. A hospital in Cagayan de Oro is taking added measures to address the surge in COVID-19 cases there. City Mayor Oscar Moreno believes if there is anyone to blame for the situation, it should not be vaccine czar Carlito Galvez. Abansenya with the story.
The Northern Mindanao Medical Center now implements an appointment-based system for outpatients as COVID-19 cases surge in Cagayan de Oro. They are limiting the number of non-COVID patients to focus on the bigger task at hand. Non-COVID outpatients admit the struggle is real with the new protocol.
Maraming requirements. May QR code, may certification pa dapat galing sa barangay. Hassle talaga. Kung di ka dumating sa oras ng appointment mo, di ka talaga makakapasok.
NMMC Director Dr. Jose Chan says they are also increasing COVID beds for critical cases to address the rising number of patients. He adds that hiring of additional personnel may not be far off.
We have to increase it to 50%, even more than that. So we add up more critical beds for these cases.
As of today, the city recorded more than 120 new cases. Death toll climbed to almost 400. City health officials suspect the surge has something to do with mass gatherings and travel outside Cagayan de Oro.
Based on their profiles, no, pamilya ang affected, workplace, kabarkada, attend ng mga gatherings like weddings, birthdays, yung mga wakes or funerals.
Cagayan de Oro City Mayor Oscar Moreno defends National Task Force Chief Implementer Carlito Galvez. Galvez recently earned the ire of Cagayan de Oro Congressman Rufus Rodriguez over supposed poor vaccine allocation for the city. Moreno says there are also allocated Pfizer vaccines for Cagayan de Oro.
Congressman Rufus was ill-informed and ill-advised. Yung paninira niya kay Secretary Galvez was totally inappropriate.
Pfizer vaccines were used in inoculating members of the city's A4 population on Wednesday. Authorities are targeting to vaccinate at least 400 people per day. But restrictions remain stringent. Barangay exit passes will now be imposed to limit movement. Checkpoints are also still in place with Cagayan de Oro's MECQ status extended until June 30. For News 5, Jem Avancenia, we are One News.
The IATF has recently approved the opening of gyms, fitness centers, and indoor sports venues in the NCR Plus bubble. But was this move a little too late for some? Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez gives us a front seat to the story.
At this gym in Quezon City, every day starts with a rush of activity. Gym staff get down on hands and knees, sweeping, scrubbing, wiping, and spraying every last piece of equipment. After more than a year of being in limbo, staff are ecstatic they can finally go back to work.
Masaya naman kasi kahit pa paano makakapag-operate na kami ulit. May pangtos sa araw-araw.
This branch has been closed since March this year. They have since lost 70% of their active members.
Our industry is based on people's count. As much as possible, they have to be present here in the gym for our business to continue.
They survived because of rent concessions. Staff had to be placed on unpaid leave during the extended lockdown, so many turned to other sidelines.
Mahilig ako sa photography. Ginawa ko na siyang sideline.
According to Trade Secretary Mon Lopez, some 22,000 displaced workers should be able to get their jobs back now that the IATF has loosened restrictions. Gyms, fitness centers, and other non-contact sports facilities in NCR Plus are allowed to accommodate up to 30% capacity as long as they have the safety seals. In order to get a seal, establishments must show there's good ventilation inside and that they uphold basic safety protocols.
Ito po ay isang paraan para mabigyan at mabalik ang kumpiyansa ng ating mga kababayan, mga customers.
At the same time, Lopez has asked the IATF to consider letting gyms without safety seals reopen now and apply for the safety seal later.
We're assuring public and our members that we'll still comply with that. Even there's already an announcement that we can operate without having it.
It's a ray of hope for the fitness industry. Unfortunately, there are also many gyms around the country who couldn't wait for this day anymore. Just like this one behind me, which permanently shut down in 2020, unable to sustain the business due to the repeated lockdowns. I'm Pamela Vasquez and we are One News.
Health Undersecretary Leopoldo Vega tells the public that face shields may be removed but only in outdoor spaces. In today's Laging Handa briefing, Vega says face shields may be removed outdoors to avoid accidents, especially when it fogs up and blurs one's vision. He also said that transmission risk is low outdoors. But Vega says face shields are still required in indoor public places or during face-to-face conversations. The IATF maintains the policy requiring the use of face shields both outdoors and indoors.
Ang face shields, kakailangan naman talaga yan pag nasa indoor ka, pag nasa mall ka, or pag may interaction ka na face-to-face inside. Ano? Pero pag nasa outside naman kasi, alam naman natin kasi maka-affect yung moist nito. So pwede nyo tanggalin ho yan.
Time for an extra look at some of the day's big stories. Intensive care unit beds in Metro Manila hospitals are no longer overwhelmed, according to treatment czar Leopoldo Vega. Vega said ICU utilization rate in the capital has already dipped below 50% or at low risk, though Makati and Muntinlupa ICUs are still at least 70% full or at high risk. President Rodrigo Duterte has expressed his support for House Majority Leader Martin Romualdez should he run for vice president. But Duterte still toyed with the idea of gunning for VP himself. That's contrary to his previous pronouncements of resisting calls to run for the position. And human rights lawyer Chel Diokno will try his luck again in the 2022 elections. Diokno did not specify the position he will seek this time. He was included in Isambayan's list of possible presidential and VP bets. Diokno said he seeks to give the ordinary Filipinos and youth a voice anew. Now for the big story in sports. It's another dream come true for Yuka Saso. A week after winning the 2021 US Women's Open, Saso met her idol and former #1 Rory McIlroy for the first time. Saso visited McIlroy for a practice round at the Torrey Pines Municipal Golf Course in San Diego, California. The Irish golf star previously congratulated Saso on social media following her win. She admitted that meeting McIlroy was more nerve-wracking than her sudden death playoff for the US Women's Open crown.
Yeah, meeting Rory I was more nervous. I didn't know how to say hi. Yeah, but he was so nice. He was so kind and he was so open. When I asked him a question, he was so honest. And I hope I can ask him more advice.
Time for another quick break when we return. Gilas Pilipinas is now bound for the FIBA Asia Cup. That's after they edged out South Korea in a game that was a cliffhanger up to the final second.
Good evening, you're still watching The Big Story. The government is firm in its refusal to cooperate with the ICC on a requested probe into President Duterte's drug war. But law experts say that the investigation may not even begin until well after Duterte's term ends. Aden Columbiran with the details.
This is now a political issue. Hindi magko-cooperate ang presidente hanggang tapos na kanyang termino sa June 30 of 2022.
This is the palace's immediate response after outgoing ICC prosecutor Fatou Bensouda sought authority to do a full probe into the Duterte administration's war on drugs. Now, should the country not cooperate, does this put the ICC probe into a stalemate? The palace once cited the case in Afghanistan when ICC pre-trial chamber judges declined a probe into war crime abuses due to the government's non-cooperation. The PTC said that an investigation will not serve the interests of justice. The decision was slammed and was later on revoked. But even if the Afghanistan case is used, Central Law's attorney Gilbert Andres tells One News the Chiefs that there's still a possible workaround.
The administration might be laying the groundwork to invoke that pre-trial chamber decision on the Afghanistan situation. I think the ICC Office of the Prosecutor still has creative means to resort to so that it can have a good investigation.
But what does that creativity entail? Attorney Ruben Carranza said the probe could make use of publicly available resources as well as information forwarded by various sources inside and outside the country. Investigators may also bring witnesses or insiders out of the concerned country. Carranza adds, the president's statements may also add weight to the case.
They don't even have to be uttered in logical ways, but they are going to have a legal effect. The crime isn't the incitement, the crime is the killing, and therefore these statements may constitute indirect co-perpetration.
But realistically speaking, investigation might not even begin during the remainder of President Duterte's term.
Pinipinpoint pa lang ngayon, ano ba yung mga international crimes na nangyayari sa Pilipinas nung panahong partido pa tayo sa ICC. So malayo-layo pa po yan.
The AFP meanwhile stands by the country's capability to investigate on its own the government's war on drugs.
For as long as I know, the Philippines has a justice system that is functioning, and our government is able to and willing to try cases.
Arian Kalumbiran, we are One News.
In world news, Coca-Cola loses $4 billion in market value after Portuguese soccer superstar Cristiano Ronaldo snubbed 2 Coke bottles at a news conference. Coca-Cola loses $4 billion in market value. Yes, we already said that after Ronaldo snubbed 2 Coke bottles at a news conference. Despite being tournament sponsors, Ronaldo moved the bottles of the sugary drink away from his possession and then held up a bottle of water to the media. He then said, "Drink water," to the cameras before disapprovingly saying, "Coca-Cola."
Another big story in sports, and like what they say, the Korean curse has been broken again. Gilas Pilipinas has pulled off the upset over South Korea thanks to a game winner from SJ Belangel. Nerve stepped in for Gilas during the first half as South Korea looked poised to dominate the game. But Gilas came roaring back in the second half, led by big men Kai Soto and Ange Kwame. Point guards SJ Belangel and RJ Abarientos also chipped in to pull Gilas within striking distance. The two nations then geeked it out at the end, trading leads. And with around 2.3 seconds left in the game, Belangel made a tough three-pointer to give Gilas the win. And with the win, they now advance to the FIBA Asia Cup. Congratulations to Gilas Pilipinas. Laban, puso po tayo.
Aaminin ko, napaisip ako nung sinabi niyo ang nangyari rito.
No, Liza Soberanos Alexandra Trece is not monotonous. That's according to voice talent Inka Magnaye. Contrary to criticisms, Inka said Liza's voice is perfect, with its great balance of youthfulness and grim. She defended Liza's dynamics and delivery. For Inka, there's a fine line between maintaining cadence and being monotonous. She then took her stab at voicing Alexandra Trece to show that no matter how pleasant her voice can be, it simply is too mature for Munting Trece.
Magandang gabi, Captain Guerrero. Lumang kasulatan, pabayaang gawa. Malinaw na sinakripisyo siya. Mas importanteng tanong, sino ang papatay sa multo at bakit?
Trece showrunner Jay Oliva said he consulted with co-creator Budget 10 on how he envisioned the character. Like Batman, a character among Jay's many projects, Trece was meant to be cold and unemotional. Jay commended Liza and her English counterpart, Shay Mitchell. He said their unique performances are better than he could have imagined. Nick Garcia, We Are One News.
Last night, we learned about a working student who graduated by selling chicharon and nick. And now another working student finished college by being a delivery rider. Oliver Calope of Cavite just earned a criminology degree thanks to Lala Move. Oliver said he had to go through heat and rain just to move in school and in life. In celebration, he shared a photo of himself in his toga while sporting his company's insulated bag and jacket.
Madiskarte, ano? Oo. At speaking of madiskarte, isa sa kailangan natin congratulate ang aking partner na si Robbie Alampay.
Balik, dalawang winner natin ngayon. Gilas is one. The other one is, of course, Robbie Alampay, who was named
one of the men who matter in People Asia magazine.
Buti sinabi mo yung magazine kasi I would have said another magazine.
Well, actually, I'm not sure if he accepted his award tonight or he stayed at home watching the Gilas game and beat us all to it.
Okay, wise. Okay, sige.
Wise madiskarte. Congratulations, Robbie. And I'll see you soon. Well, that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. I'm Edlin Gao.
And I'm Gretchen Hall. We are One News. Have a good evening.